Hello, my name is Abigail Rutherford, and this is my passion project on sexual assault among college students. I picked this topic because this has been in the news a lot recently from my area. I live in Utah, and this has been a huge problem. At least every single college has been in the news for something along these lines. Utah State was investigated by the Department of Justice in 2017 for mishandling hundreds of sexual assault cases on campus. I think it ended up being they had about 250 cases brought to them or allegations, and they only moved forward with about 20. And so those numbers are drastically different and should have probably been more thoroughly investigated. BYU recently kicked a student out who was sexually assaulted because they broke the honor code. And the assault was considered to be a sexual relation, which is against their code of conduct. Both the University of Utah and Utah Valley University are being sued for failing to act after an assault. So different assaults on different campuses, but they both did the same thing, which is nothing. Nearly 13% of college students will experience sexual assault. This is not a very settling statistic when you're thinking of parents who are sending their child off to college this fall. This can be very nerve-wracking and it's really scary. 13% is quite a bit. The red zone is a term used that is to describe the period of time between the first day of school and Thanksgiving break, about that time when parents drop off and parents pick up their kid for the first time, which is when about over 50% of sexual assaults happen on campus. The profession that the National Association of Social Work stance of sexual assault on sexual assault is actually there is none. There is not a specific stance on it, but they do have a lot of stances on different topics that kind of relate to sexual assault, such as sexual abuse and physical abuse prevention programs, sexual social work education that focuses on reproductive and sexual coercion and harm reduction strategies, and safety plans, which we can obviously understand why those go together. Reproductive, somebody who has been assaulted can oftentimes become pregnant from their perpetrator, and what do we do then, and what does that mean for them? Protecting people in the sex trade from violence. This is, I added this one because I think that they are kind of hand in hand when you consider the form of work they're doing, which is usually a sexual act, and how that violence can be taken to them. Oftentimes can include rape or some kind of equal to rape. The National Association of Social Work should have a stance on social work or on sexual assault, being that the sexual assault can result in a number of mental illnesses. A study has shown that the women who were raped were more likely to be diagnosed with depression and PTSD. So as we are mental health advocates and mental health experts, we should really be looking into this and recognizing this is a huge problem and that is aligned with what we are supposed to be doing. Factors to consider. We need to be conscious that during this discussion of sexual assault, it's not a conversation about just justice, but has many parts. It's super important that each victim gets the justice they deserve, but we need to be thinking about the victim first and the different parts that play into it, the different factors such as relationships. We don't know if the victim's perpetrator was her roommate's boyfriend or a colleague or their professor or their spouse. We need to consider what it would do for them outside of just the actual event that has happened. We need to consider the culture or religion. As for those people who go to BYU and sex before marriage is against their religion, they do consider this a sexual act and are worried about how they'll be viewed to their family and their friends and their community when this comes out, if it comes out, or even when they're coping with it. We need to consider the sexual and gender preferences of the victim. Many people view sexual assault victims as women, and that is not always the case. It can often happen to cisgender males, as well as LGBTQ community members. And this topic can be even more harsh for them because of that. The policy I have picked is House Bill 254, also known as campus sexual violence reporting. Just a little bit of a rundown. This law would make it so that employees who work at the university would become mandatory reporters of sexual assault, whether they work in the library, whether they work at the dining hall, or they're your RA, they would make them required if they receive a paycheck from the university to report it to the police. It would also make stricter consequences on retaliation and would prevent colleges from kicking students out for breaking code of conduct or punishing them for code of conduct. The pros to this are it prevents schools like BYU from punishing victims for breaking on our code, and we would have more accurate numbers of sexual assault reports. We might see that this is a greater problem than we even imagined when these reports come out, that every time somebody said it, they reported it, and how that might change things. The cons are super important. Takes away the rights of the victims. In theory, this policy is meant to help and comes from good intentions, but there are portions that need to be altered. Like I said, that we need to be considering the victim first, and we need to consider those factors that I mentioned earlier that might change things for them. I can't imagine what it would be like if you told somebody, your academic advisor, that you had been assaulted and by your husband, and now they have to go and report it, and they're going to take action against your husband or against your professor. Or maybe you didn't tell your parents, and now they are going to know because you're going through this police process. I think that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. By doing that, I think we can alter this bill so that it states that the college employees will report the perpetrator if 2 or more students come forward with allegations. It would help this be more or less invasive on the victim, and it will be harder for the perpetrator to identify who is reporting them. And I think it will still give us those accurate numbers of like, this is happening. We'll be able to take data, but that it'll be confidential data. My person, I chose Burgess Owens because he is a Republican in my area. And as it is known, Utah is a relatively conservative Republican state, and I wanted to pick a representative that the people would like and that they trust. He is also a member of the House Committee on Education and Labor, and although he only works with education that is for elementary and secondary, this problem directly affects those he helps now in their future who seek education beyond that. He is also a supporter of ending sex trafficking, so I thought that perhaps that because he is such an advocate for ending sex trafficking, that he might be an advocate for ending sexual violence on campuses. And the ways to contact Burgess Owens is his website. There is an area on his website where you can ask him questions or leave comments, things like that. It wouldn't be my first choice on how to contact him because they do not answer questions from people who are not from his jurisdiction. So that would be quite a few people. You could write him a letter on his website. He has his address for both his Washington, D.C. location and his Utah location, which is where I'm located. It also includes his email and a phone number to contact. You could also go to the office in person since the address is posted on the website. It is also has the suite number, so you have the exact location. Probably what I would do is I would call ahead of time and ask them if they have time to meet. And if it turns out he does not have time to meet, or they're not cooperating with me, but I'd still like to meet with them, I might just show up there in person. I think that would be the best approach, because I don't want any of my message to be muffled because of a letter or context or things like that. I want it to be real. Practice. I chose Savvy, which is the Sexual Assault Anti-Violence Information Resource at Utah State. They provide resources to victims of sexual assault and interrelational violence. They are also provide trainings on the issue. They work with the community to change the culture of assault on campus and do a lot of good stuff. My interview, I did Jenny Arazo. She is the director of Savvy, and we talked a lot about how she advocates for the victim and how Savvy advocates for victims. And they make sure that they have all the accommodations they need, whether it be class changes, extended time, or even um, parking spot moved, or housing changes in case your perpetrator is your roommate or lives on the same floor as you or knows where you live. They're super willing to work with other people. They do use their resources on campus and connect with them and work with them a lot, like the offices of equity, the housing, as well as parking. They all work together in campus police to kind of make this a little bit easier on the student, as well as she works with other people in the community outside of the college, like UCASA or women's shelters and the police down there, so that they can get the most resources, because sometimes they need more than what the university can provide. Savvy is involved in a lot of policy work. They directly work with the college and how they create policies that affect victims, and they are asked to give the mindset or the perspective of the victim so that they can be kept in the discussion. She also works at a state level for legislation that she can put the victims' wants and needs, or the mindset of the victims in those policies as well, just like House Bill 254. She actually changed my mind, because originally I picked that policy and I thought it was great. I thought that it had a lot of good things in it, and that, like I said, there was a lot of pros to it. But after I talked to her and she explained to me that the most important part of an assault is the victim, and how we need to take care of them. And we need to think about how they are feeling and what they think and how this will affect them. So she helped change my mind, and I realized that this actually wouldn't be a great thing for them, which is who it affects the most. There were a lot of things I learned from Jenny and my research on this topic and things like that. But most of all, it was to look at things from a different perspective, and to not just read things as they are, as well as critically think about politics that are policies that are presented to me, and who they might affect, who they work well for, and who they benefit, and things like that. And just really kind of thinking from all different edges and different areas so that you can get the full picture. Another thing that I learned is there are a lot of ways that I can get involved in policy work, not just watching the news and things like that. And it's not that hard. And that everybody should get involved and find things that they're passionate about and work hard to change them and to make a difference. I think we'll be surprised at the change we're able to make. And I think a lot of people are on the side that they don't have the skills, or they don't know who to talk to. But I think that this is simple, and that we can all make a change if we really try. What's next for my policy, for my passion, for me, for social workers? I think that as a social worker and as social workers, we need to continue the conversation of sexual assault. It is a hard conversation to have, but it's a conversation that is needed to be had. I will continue to work on this and to see how this policy goes, and continue to follow it and advocate for its changes, and for it to be implemented after those changes. And I will continue to look at things from the victim's mindset so that I can help them the best the way that I can. These are my references. And thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my slideshow.